Hi, this is another Ask Augustin. Today I'm going to talk about Portato and Legato. The distinction between the two was actually something that I wasn't so clear about growing up because I was listening to a lot of violinists who were doing a lot of Portato, like Yehudi Menuhin and David Oistrakh, and I really loved how it sounded. I loved doing Portato, and it became kind of a habit that I started doing so much Portato that by the time I was studying at Juilliard, my teacher there, Joel Smirnoff, he got quite mad at me one day and said, "Can you please just play one phrase with a real legato?" And that's when I realized, oh, I guess I'm doing really Portato all the time, and became really aware of it and started paying attention to when I play legato and when I play Portato. The definition of Portato is basically that when you have a note underneath a slur, that you are actually kind of stopping and restarting the bow. That there's like a little bit of air between the notes. It can actually be very expressive, like a singer going ba 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 ba, like enunciating the words a little bit, and it can touch us very much. But when you do it all the time, its effect kind of wears off. You should always have a distinction between and these two different ways to use your bow under a slur. The thing is, I really love Portato, and I love doing Portato. I do it very often, but I've come to realize that it only has really an effect if there are passages that are not Portato, that are really legato. Like all expressive tools that we have as violinists, we have to use them at the right time, and the same is true for vibrato, for example. If you vibrate every note like crazy, then it's almost like you're vibrating no note, because it just kind of starts to sound all the same. So a beautiful Portato on just the right place can really touch people very much, because it feels like the music is more spoken, more personal somehow, very expressive, but it will have this effect if it is actually something special. It will not have this effect if you're doing it the entire piece through. Then you almost kind of get used to this constant Portato and stop noticing it. When you practice your legato, a good place to start is to take a passage that's under a slur. Let's say you're playing, and you use the right hand as though it was one note, and do the pitch changes only with the left hand. This is when you become aware if maybe the way that you're changing fingers with the left hand is not so clean, and maybe that's why it became a habit to do a lot of Portato. Sometimes it can be kind of the easy way out to avoid working harder with the left hand. But it's essential to use it. It actually helps projection a lot as well, and it's when you have real legato that the Portato really speaks to us. In the Tchaikovsky concerto, you wouldn't want to play the whole thing Portato. I think if you play the whole thing legato, then it also can sound a little bit all the same. Can actually be very beautiful if you start legato, and now a little bit, and then legato again, and then Portato. As you go from one to another, this little piano effect is somehow more effective because it was first legato and then Portato. Because at first I went, and then that's a use of Portato that I think is very appropriate expressively. You heard the legato sound, and now that it feels somehow more personal when you use the Portato, but it's because we just heard it with the full legato sound. It's in contrast to the legato that the Portato really speaks to us. Portato can sometimes also be helpful to hide shifts that you don't want to hear if you're going, you don't want people to hear this kind of noise. That's when I lighten the bow during it. You don't necessarily have to stop the bow like this. You can actually keep going, but just get very, very light. Sometimes for hiding shifts, portato can be a subtle little touch to make it sound cleaner. But portato should always be used on purpose. You always should be aware of when you use it and for what reason, because otherwise it can become kind of a mannerism, like too much of a good thing. It's really beautiful, but when you do it all the time, the effect kind of wears off. I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you next time.